One of the most magical things you can do in Photoshop is to combine multiple objects to make what's called a composite. To follow along, open this image from the practice files, which is a photo of a sculptor's hand. To add in another photo of the sculptor's art, go up to the File menu and choose Place Embedded. Select this image and click Place. Then go up to the Options bar and click the check mark. In the Layers panel, that's created a new layer that contains just the photo of the sculptor's artwork, which is a pencil on a wood background. What we need to do is cut out or isolate the pencil from the wood. You might be tempted to do that by trying to erase the wood, but that method has a couple of downsides. To give it a try, go over to the Tools panel and select the Eraser tool. Then move into the image and click. And you get this message. Just click OK to dismiss that for now, and then go back to the image and drag to erase part of the wood. The downside of this is that if you were to save and close this image now and then reopen it, all of the pixels you're erasing would be permanently deleted. So if you're in a hurry, you may want to use the Eraser tool. But let me show you a more flexible, editable method, a layer mask. To create a layer mask, go over to the Layers panel and make sure that the Object layer is selected. Then go down to the bottom of the Layers panel and click this icon that looks like a rectangle with a circle inside it. That adds this layer mask to the object layer. At first, a layer mask is white like this, and where a layer mask is white, it shows everything on the layer to which it's attached, everything on the object layer. But let's see what happens if we add black paint to this layer mask. First, double check that the layer mask, not the image thumbnail, is selected, that it has this border around it. Then go over to the Tools panel and select the Brush tool. Go down to the bottom of the Tools panel and make sure you have black as your foreground color. If you don't, press D on your keyboard. D is for Default Colors, and that sets the default colors of black as the foreground color and white as the background color. Move into the image, press the right or left bracket keys to size your brush tip, and paint. The black paint on the layer mask hides the image on the object layer. If you paint too far and you paint over the pencil, go back to the Tools panel and click the bent arrow above the color boxes, and that switches to white as the foreground color. And then go back to the image and paint with white to show what's on the object layer, to reveal the pencil again. Here's a little rhyme to help you remember that. When you add paint to a layer mask, black conceals and white reveals. Now go back to the Tools panel and switch to black paint again. And continue to paint on the layer mask, hiding the wood, switching to white paint if you make any mistakes, and paint over the pencil. To speed this up, I'll just show you how the image will look when you're done hiding the wood. Now don't worry about getting that edge perfect. It actually would take a lot of time to do it with a mouse or a trackpad particularly. The point is to understand how layer masks work. And in the next video, I'll show you another way to do this to get a sharper edge that involves selecting an object and filling it with black rather than painting with black and white. So now let's finish this up by positioning and resizing the pencil. We'll go to the Edit menu and choose Free Transform. Hold down the Shift key, hover over one of the corners, and then click, hold, and drag in to make the pencil smaller. Then move outside of a corner, and when your cursor changes to a curved double-pointed arrow, click and drag to rotate the pencil. Then move inside the boundary and drag to position it wherever you want it in the image. And then go up to the Options bar and click the check mark. Now when you save this image, be sure to use the Save As command and save your working file in the Photoshop, the PSD format, so that you retain the layers and this layer mask. Because you did use a layer mask to just hide the wood on the object layer rather than permanently erase it with the Eraser tool, the object layer remains intact, and you could come back any time and fine-tune the layer mask with black or white paint, or even delete the layer mask by dragging it to the trash icon down here at the bottom of the Layers panel. And that editing flexibility is the real beauty of layer masking. Did you ever want to replace a bland or distracting image background? In this video, we'll do just that, and we'll learn more about layer masking in the process. We'll start with this photo from the practice files of an art piece by a wood artist. Let's replace its background with a more interesting shot from the artist's studio. The first step is to bring in another background image. To do that, go up to the File menu, choose Place Embedded, and navigate to this image and click Place. Go to the Options bar and click the check mark. Over in the Layers panel, there's a brand new layer with the new image. We need to drag that new layer beneath the original background layer. But we can't do that because the background layer is a locked layer. If you just wanted to unlock this layer, you could click this lock icon. But if you want to unlock the layer and rename it all in one step, then select the background layer by clicking on it, and then right-click or hold down the Control key and click if you're on a Mac, and choose Layer from Background. And in the New Layer dialog box that appears, type a new name for this layer. I'll call it Pencil, and then click OK. Now select the Replace Background layer and click, hold, and drag beneath the pencil layer. You can release your finger from the mouse or trackpad when you see a double line under the pencil layer. The next thing we're going to do is make a selection of the background, and at that point you could delete it from the image completely, but that would be a permanent change and wouldn't leave you very much editing flexibility. To do it a more flexible way, we're going to use a selection with a layer mask. To see what I mean, click on the pencil layer in the Layers panel. Go over to the Tools panel and select the Quick Selection tool. Now you could select either the foreground object or the background, so just click and drag over the background to select it. Before we apply a layer mask, we need to have the item that we want to show, not the item that we want to hide, selected. So we need to invert this selection. Go up to the Select menu and choose Inverse. Now go to the Layers panel and click the Create New Layer Mask icon at the bottom of that panel. That was a real time saver because Photoshop not only created a layer mask, it also filled in the area that wasn't selected on that layer mask with black. And where a layer mask is black, it hides the content on the layer to which it's attached, the pencil layer. Where a layer mask is white, it shows the content on that layer. On this mask, the white is showing the pencil and the black is hiding the pencil, so we can see down through to the new background layer below. If you're happy with that result, you're done. You've achieved your goal of replacing the background image. But here's a bonus option. You can try to fine-tune the mask to make it look even better. To do that, go up to the Select menu and choose Select and Mask. That opens the image with the mask applied here in the special Select and Mask workspace. Earlier in this tutorial series, we visited this workspace when we were fine-tuning a selection. Now we're fine-tuning a mask, which is very similar. First, let's click on the View menu and choose the way we'll view the image in this workspace. I'm going to choose on Layers, which will let us see exactly how the pencil will look against the new background layer as we adjust the mask. I'll click on a blank area to close the View menu, and then I'll go to the Global Refinements section of this dialog box. Here there are sliders that often work well when you're trying to isolate a hard-edged image, like this pencil. Keep your eye on this white halo along the edge of the pencil that we want to remove. As I go to the Shift Edge slider, and I move it to the left. And what I'm doing is contracting the mask so that it's hiding that edge. You also can try dragging the Smooth slider to the right to smooth out the edge of that mask, and I might try dragging the Contrast slider to the right to make the edge along the pencil a little more contrasty or crisp. When you're done with the sliders, scroll down and make sure the Output menu is set to Layer Mask, and then click OK. And that modifies the layer mask that we already had applied to the pencil layer. One last thing. Notice that there's a link icon between the layer mask thumbnail and the image thumbnail on the pencil layer. That means that if we were to move the pencil layer, the layer mask would go with it. Go over to the Tools panel and get the Move tool, and then click on the pencil and drag it over to the right. Now all that's left to do is to save the image, and you want to be sure to use the Save As command and save in the Photoshop the PSD format, so that you retain your layers and this layer mask so that you have the flexibility to come back in the future and fine-tune your layer mask further if you want to. Photoshop comes with lots of filters that you can apply in combination to get an almost unlimited number of different looks on the same image. In this video, you'll learn how to preview and apply combinations of filters using the filter gallery. If you're following along, open this image from the practice files for this tutorial. We only have one layer in this image. If you're working on a multi-layer image, then select the layer to which you want to apply the filter. And then go up to the filter menu. And if you come down to this area, you can apply a single filter from any of these categories. But let's see how we can preview and apply combinations of filters. For that, choose Filter Gallery from this menu. That opens this big filter gallery window, with the last filter that you used applied to the open image. So your image may look slightly different than mine. Over on the left, there's a big preview, and in the middle, there are thumbnails of filters. To preview a filter on your image, just click its thumbnail. And you'll find lots more filter thumbnails in these folders. I'll click the arrow to the left of this folder to open it, and I'll click on one of these filters. Now, even if you don't like the look of a filter at first, give it a chance, because there's a lot you can do over in the next column where you'll find controls that are unique to whichever filter you just selected. And you can experiment with these controls. What's really special about the filter gallery is that you can preview combinations of filters on your image here. To add another filter, I'll go down to the bottom of the column on the right, and I'll click this Create New Filter Layer icon. You can now see that there are two copies of Diffuse Glow applied to this image. With the top one selected, I'll apply a different second filter instead. I'm going to click the arrow to the left of the Texture folder and scroll down a little and click on the Texturizer filter. With this filter, you can choose different textures to add to an image. And you have controls you can use to vary the look. Let's add one more filter to this combination by going down to the bottom of the column and clicking this icon, and then going over and selecting another filter thumbnail. Even if you don't like the look of this at first, you can go back to the filter layers where there's now a new layer and click and drag that layer beneath another filter and get a very different look. You can turn these filter layers off and on temporarily by clicking the eye icon to the left of any one. So there's how this looks without that last filter, and here's how it looks with the filter. If you really don't like one of the filters, you can delete it by selecting it here and then going down and clicking the trash icon. When you like the preview of a combination of filters, you can apply them to the image by going up to the top of this window and clicking OK. That closes the Filter Gallery window and takes you back to your main Photoshop workspace. Applying those filters has made a permanent change to this image, so regardless of the format in which you save the image now, the filters will be baked in and non-editable. If you don't like the filters, the only thing you can do at this point would be to undo. As you get better at Photoshop, you may decide to give yourself more flexibility by applying filters in a non-permanent way as editable smart filters, as you'll learn how to do in the next video. Blurring a background image is a great way to draw attention to what's in the foreground. In this video, we'll apply a quick blur to a background, and as a bonus, you'll learn how to apply any filter in a non-permanent, editable way as a smart filter. Give it a try with this image from the practice files for this tutorial. First, let's bring in a foreground image. Go up to the File menu, choose Place Embedded, and navigate to this image in the practice files, and click Place. To make this image smaller, hold the Shift key, hover over a corner, and drag inward. If you want to reposition this image, click inside of the box and drag to where you want it. And you can rotate it too by moving your cursor outside of one of the corners, and when the cursor becomes a double-pointed curved arrow, dragging the image to rotate it a little bit. To finish placing the image, go up to the options bar and click the check mark. So that's the beginning of a travel composite. If we want to draw more attention to the foreground image, let's try blurring the background image, and we'll do that by adding a filter. Go to the Layers panel and select the background layer. Then go up to the Filter menu, and before you choose a filter, choose Convert for Smart Filters, and click OK. That changes the background layer into a special layer that will support an editable or smart filter. So let's go ahead and apply a blur filter as a smart filter. Go back up to the Filter menu and go to Blur and choose the Gaussian Blur filter. In the Gaussian Blur dialog box that opens, just drag the radius slider to the right to increase the blur, or to the left to decrease blur. With the preview box checked, you'll see a preview of the blur in the image. If I uncheck that, you can see how the image looks without the blur, and if I check that, here's how it looks with that blur. When you're satisfied, click OK. Take a look at the Layers panel, and you'll see that the background layer has a sub-layer underneath it, and that's the Smart Filter, the Gaussian Blur Smart Filter. You can apply any filter the same way. The beauty of using smart filters is that they remain editable. So even if I were to save this file and close it, and then reopen it again, the Gaussian Blur filter would be here waiting for me to re-edit it if I wanted to. The only thing you have to be sure to do is to save in a format that retains layers, like the Photoshop or PSD format. If you do want to re-edit a smart filter, just double-click its name here in the Layers panel, and it reopens, and you can make a change. And then click OK. So the next time you're applying a filter, think about whether you might want to change that filter, and if so, apply it as a smart filter and save in the PSD format.